consideration. And that really brings us to the Constitutional Convention. So here we have this great Constitution with all this great language, but we have this invisible Constitution created by the legal class in Ohio that has really sort of caused it to evaporate. So can we get it back just through electing our judges, or do we have to do something a little bit more stark? Well, one of the things that's going on in Columbus right now is this Constitutional Modernization Commission. How many of you have heard of that? A few of you have. What this is basically a 10-year process where the legislature picks people to be on it, and they're going to hang out and kind of pick apart the Ohio Constitution and decide what parts they want to amend, and then put that on the ballot for the people to consider. The commission is headed by the Speaker of the House and the highest-ranking Democrat. They pick the members. They haven't chosen the members yet, so we don't know what they're going to look like. But based upon what I've heard, it's not going to be any of you, and it's not going to be me. It's going to be former legislators and friends of the legislators and other people like that. And the issues they're going to focus on are mostly inside baseball. They're mostly concerned with term limits, which you all voted in favor of in the 1990s. And the constant complaining is that term limits are a terrible thing because they don't allow legislators to become career legislators. And if they could become career legislators, then they would be in a better position to stand up to the special interests. Right. I'm not exaggerating in reciting their arguments. That is very much their argument. They say, well, we're term limited, so we've got to vote the way the governor wants because he can appoint us to a cushy government job so we can get our full PERS pension benefits after we're done with our terms. So if we could be legislators forever, that wouldn't be such a problem. And there'd be more stability, is the other argument that the Speaker of the House makes. He says, the problem with some of these new young guys that the Tea Party has elected is they're just too hostile to working with the other side in a bipartisan fashion. So we need people that have been around for 20 or 30 years to become friends and allies and even golf together, like some of our friends at the federal level, right? So these are the arguments, and you will very much see a move against term limits coming from this commission. You'll also see a move against the initiative and referendum, and you should be very aware of this. Now, the initiative and referendum, to be sure, was a progressive era advent. It was 1912 when it was placed in the Ohio Constitution. Although what we used for the Healthcare Freedom Amendment was created in 1851. That's the notion of a citizen-initiated constitutional amendment. That's been around since 1851. But the initiated statute we used for the estate tax, for example, was a 1912 solution, if you want to call it that. They very much opposed the initiative and referendum, in part because of what happened to them last year with SB 5, but they've opposed it before that. And it's the notion of paternalism. It's the notion that the people should not be deciding what the laws are themselves. They should be electing philosopher kings to decide those laws for them. And it's very important to us to protect the initiative because there have been failures. The marketplace for politics encourages special interest group behavior, right? So, the smoking ban, for example, took away property rights, was passed through the initiative. It was done because the American Cancer Society could bankroll the whole thing, and the individual bar owners were like pets, impossible to hurt. The casinos, anybody who's well organized and has lots of money can use this process fairly easily. But you know what? We've gotten to the point as a liberty movement where we can use this process also, and we're really starting to use it to pay dividends at all kinds of levels. So we would hate to see that process go away, and we like having the referendum there. It's nice to have a check on the legislators if they go too far, and it's nice to be able to let the people propose your laws. Think about it this way: if you're skeptical of the initiative and referendum, think about being a kid in a candy store, and you have to beg your mother or father for that piece of candy because you don't have any of your own money, so they've got to buy it for you. Well, a political system without the initiative and referendum basically reduces you to a civic child instead of a civic adult, right? You've got to beg the legislator for that law you want passed, or that law you want repealed, more hopefully. You've got to beg the legislator for your rights. You've got no other way. You can't go around them. You've got to go through them. Wouldn't you want that if you're a legislator? Of course you would. Well, just like going out and earning an allowance and having your own money allows you to buy that candy for yourself, the initiative and referendum is what allows you to have your own civic currency. It's what allows you to take matters into your own hands, and you don't have to beg these other people who are your equals at best for your rights back. So you can take care of it yourself. So it's very important to protect the initiative and referendum from this Constitutional Modernization Commission. And then finally, one of the big issues they're going to look at is whether judges should be elected or appointed. And I have to be frank with you, we have a very good track record in state courts with elected judges, but nevertheless, we have to be very careful with the cases that we bring, because if we bring cases we really want to bring, we lose every time, right? Because the case law has been bastardized to a large extent. And so at one time we supported the election of judges, but I've become very neutral myself as to whether they're elected or appointed. The Federalist Society favors the election of judges, and that's a group of conservative libertarian lawyers. I'm the president of the Columbus chapter. On the other hand, the Democrats in the Ohio Municipal League, which is the city lobbyists that want to bring back the estate tax, they favor the appointment of judges. Now that tells me there's something going on with it I might not know about. It's always useful to know who supports what, and maybe pick your way that way. But I can tell you that I've personally grown somewhat agnostic over the years. I haven't seen the challenges of litigating constitutional cases before elected judges. With that said, my experience is limited to constitutional cases, and these same judges who tossed the Ohio Constitution on us here may be great on criminal sentencing issues and keeping the community safe. So that's something else to consider. And then finally, there's this notion of a constitutional convention, right? So on the November ballot, you will be able to vote on whether Ohio should have a constitutional convention. And we don't tell you how to vote one way or the other, but let me tell you what the process is. You vote for it. If enough people vote yes, and by the way, this comes up every 20 years. So it's in the Ohio Constitution. Every 20 years, this appears on the ballot. Should we have a state constitutional convention? Since 1932, it's never happened. Last full-blown state constitutional convention was 1851. We had a partial constitutional convention in 1912, and we've had amendments since then, but nothing more than that. So if you think it's time, it might be a good idea. Here's how it works. If a majority of people vote for the convention, the legislature then decides how the election will be conducted for delegates to the convention, and the delegates go and they formulate some policy ideas that then appear on the ballot. Now these delegates have to be voted on, so this is very interesting. So this works kind of like a judicial election, right? And there's no partisan label allowed. And there will be 100 delegates to the state constitutional convention if it's held. So it would look like the House of Representatives, the state house districts, basically. So you have 100 of these people, they run on a nonpartisan ballot. So it looks a little bit like a county judge race, and then it's about the same size of geography, and it's no partisan label at all. This might be an area where liberty groups can kind of arbitrage, right? Because you are well organized, there's no party label. So you've got to think about, can we do better than the other guys? Are we more engaged on these kinds of issues than the other side? And do we think there's something we could, have our say and maybe get taxes reduced, get other kinds of amendments passed, were we to work hard on this issue? I submit that you probably could, in large part because of the nonpartisan nature of the delegate process. So these delegates go, they come up with ideas, some good, some bad. They put them on the ballot, and then people vote yes or no on each individual idea. If they vote yes, it becomes part of the Ohio Constitution. If they vote no, it's not part of the Ohio Constitution. So I think that most conservatives probably are skeptical of the notion of a constitutional convention, because you're reading this book right here, and you're saying, this is really good. Why do we want to mess with this? And then you've got other people saying, yeah, it's really good, but we've got these deeds in the Ohio Constitution because of the casino amendment. We've got a section called miscellaneous. Did you know that? Our Article 1 is our Bill of Rights. Article, I think it's Article, it's not 18. I should know, but I think it's Article 17 is entitled miscellaneous. There's got a bunch of random stuff in there, soda pop tax, things like that. Can't have that, and a few other things. So could it be cleaned up possibly? But I see the need for fairly radical reform because of this invisible Constitution that the judges have created around the real Constitution. And what we would like to see is a return to standing, citizen standing, taxpayer standing, and a return to scrutiny of what the government does. And the kind of scrutiny we like to see is the kind of scrutiny we used to have in Ohio. And that is the requirement that all laws passed be necessary to advance a compelling government interest whenever they infringe upon your rights. And that's the same kind of scrutiny that federal courts apply to the First Amendment today. So it's not unprecedented. And that's why we have such vigorous protection of our First Amendment rights, is that courts do scrutinize those laws. We would like to see that scrutiny applied wherever the Ohio Constitution supplies a fundamental right in the Bill of Rights. So we're cautiously supportive of this notion of a convention. You know, the Goldwater Institute actually ranked Ohio's constitutional text number 3 in the country. We have the 3rd best state constitution in the country when you just read the text. But we're not the 3rd freest state in the country. So you've got to look at the numbers and say, well, why is that? How can we have the 3rd best constitution but not be the 3rd most free? They rank them in terms of liberty. And I'd submit to you it's largely because our judges have ignored that great text. And the only way to get their attention is the equivalent of an anti-circumvention clause, saying, you know, no, we really meant it when we wrote it down here. We really want you to enforce this. So we're cautiously in favor of the notion of a convention as the only way to get that done. And we also think that it will be challenging for anything too bad to happen. And you might say, well, we might lose some of our property rights. And I say, well, you're already losing your property rights. And you can say that about lots of different things. And really, when you look at our freedom agenda over the next 5 years, the opportunity to perhaps get it all accomplished in a convention is very appealing if we can get organized and really seize this moment. So